Hello, welcome back to another lesson with Mr. Fieck. Today we are talking about Unit 7 Review Part 2. This is the final part dealing with fractions and decimals, revealing it kind of from what we learned earlier in the year and reviewed again in Unit 7. So again, none of this should be new, should be concepts that you've been familiar with, just reviewing kind of the key concepts from what we've talked about this school year. So the first one says rewrite each pair of fractions with a common denominator. You can use the fraction bars to help if you like, then complete each statement. So making a common denominator. Well, if I have 1/3 and 1/2, the easiest way that we talked about is to just multiply your denominators together. Well, if I did that and I multiplied these 2 times 3, I would get a denominator of 6. And really what that does is it just takes my thirds and it divides each of these in half. And then if I have here, I'm just kind of doing the same thing. And I just kind of put the same things here. And now both of them have 6. So now if I change colors here, what did I multiply my 3 by to get 6? Well, if I multiply my 3 times 2, I have to multiply my 1 times my numerator, my 1 by the exact same thing. 2 times 1 is 2. So 1/3 is the exact same as shading in 2 6, because if this red line was in here and this was just a third, that would be the same as third, but now I have 1 2 of 6 whole parts. And then what did I multiply my 2 by to get 6? Well, I multiplied it by 3. And so then I multiply my numerator times 3. 3 times 1 is 3. So now in the beginning, if I would have shaded in 1/2, that would be this whole area. But now I found a common denominator and I shaded in 1, 2, 3 of my 6 possible parts. So 3, 6. Now let's do one more, but I'm not going to do the boxes and all of that, just so you can see it. Well, okay, 6 times 4 is 24. So my common denominator is going to be 24, okay? That's going to be 24. That's going to be 24. Oh, and then it says compare. Well, 2 6, okay, is, sorry, 2 6 is less than 3 6, as you can tell in the picture. Or again, cross multiply. 3 times 6 is 18, and 6 times 2 is 12. 12 is less than 18. Okay, sorry, now let's switch back over here. What did I multiply my 6 by to get 24? Well, I multiplied it by my other denominator, which is times 4. And if I multiply my denominator times 4, I have to multiply my numerator times 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So 2 6 is equivalent to 8 24ths. Now, what did I multiply my 4 by to get 24? Well, I multiplied it by 6. So if I multiply my denominator by 6, I have to multiply my numerator times 6. 6 times 1 is 6. So now that we have a common denominator, it's pretty easy to see that 8 24ths is greater than 6 24ths. So it would say 2 6 is greater than 1/4. Okay? Another way making it easy to compare when you have a common denominator. Then if we go back, still looking at fractions and decimals, comparing. The easiest way to compare decimals is line ups. Line up the decimal, because when you line up the decimal, you line up the place value. So if I have 0 and 5/10 or 50/100, comparing to 0 and 5/100, well, the zeros kind of cancel each other out. Well, 5 is greater than 0, so 50/100 is greater than 5/100. Because if I have 50 individual unit cubes, that's a lot more than having just 5 individual unit cubes. Okay, then let's look at C. We're not going to do all of these, but let's look at C. If I have 6/10 and I have 63/100, sorry about that. If I have 63/100, now I don't have anything in the hundreds place here, but I can do that because if I have 6 strips, that's the same as having 60 units, okay? So zeros cancel each other out. 6s are exactly the same, they cancel each other out. But 3 is greater than 0, so actually 6/10 is less than 63/100 because 60/100 is less than 63/100. Okay, now let's look at fractions. Well, easiest way to compare fractions is cross multiply, or you could find a common denominator that if I multiply 10 times 25, that would be 250. And if I did 100 times 2, that would be 200. Well, 200 is less than 250, so 2/10 is less than 25 hundredths. Okay? Or you could find a common denominator, and in this case, just multiply them both by 10. If I multiply them by 10, I just increase a place value, and that gets me to 40 hundredths. 40 hundredths is greater than 34 hundredths. Okay? All right, let's go look at a couple fractions. Brianna and Lupe each got a strip of fruit leather exactly the same size. Brianna ate 4/6 of her strip, and Lupe ate 3/4. Which girl ate more? Basically, this is a simple problem of figuring out which fraction is larger. You're just comparing fractions again. So to compare fractions, cross multiply. 6 times 3 is 18. 4 times 4 is 16. So guess what? 4/6 is less than 3/4. So who ate more? Lupe ate more. And then when it says show work, this would be your work, just showing that you cross multiplied, and that's how you got your answer. It's a lot for just saying which fraction is bigger, who ate more, okay? And the last one to wrap it up says, Max says 4/10 plus 35 hundredths is 39 hundredths. Ari says 4/10 plus 35 hundredths is 75 hundredths. Who is correct and how do you know? Well, we know that whenever you add or subtract fractions, you have to have a common denominator. In this case, we don't have a common denominator because one's 10 and one's 100. So we have to find a common denominator. The easiest way to make a common denominator would be to multiply 4 by 10 and 10 by 10, which then would get me 40 hundredths. Well, 40 hundredths plus 35 hundredths is 75 hundredths. So Ari would be correct. And the reason is because Max didn't find a common denominator before he added the fractions. He just added the fractions, but you can't when you don't have a common denominator. You have to find a common denominator before you can ever add or subtract fractions. So I hope these videos helped with review. I hope you had a great time watching all these videos. Have a wonderful summer and make it a great day, boys and girls.